This is NMBF Coffee Chats, as I mentioned earlier, and we meet here on Tuesdays and Fridays. Fridays is mostly topics that are related to the youth and young adults. And Tuesday we have topics that are can cater to the adult community. Yeah. Okay. So basically, today what we are going to do, we'll be having our speaker speak to us for about 40 minutes or so. And after that, we will go into a time of Q&A. So kindly hold on to your questions. If you really need to ask something, you can put it on the chat and we'll address it later. Yeah. Okay. So today we have with us Jeffson Nathan. Nathan is basically from Mumbai. He has a background of hospitality industry and diplomatic security abroad. He worked full time for the cause of anti-sex trafficking in 2011 and 12, and again volunteered in 2015, and he still responds to calls to volunteer. He has been part of the team that has rescued many girls into, from sex slavery, and some of them have been underage girls as well, and were rescued before they could be pushed into trade. His involvement were coordinations with the senior police officers who operated in the arresting traffickers and bringing trafficking crimes under control. He always had the intention to write a book, and finally that was published during the lockdown, and his two books are available on Amazon.com. Both are from his personal experience. So let me see if I could just flash it quickly. Here, 1 minute. Okay, so so that's his book, Break Free from Stigmas of Common Mental Disorder, and the other one is The Dark Side of the Earth. So these are available on Amazon.com for anybody who would like to pick it up. Yeah. All right. So The Dark Side of the Earth has 19 select true case stories contributed by various NGOs. 5 of the stories has his own involvement in it. This book is meant to edify, create awareness, and prevent the vulnerable girls from falling into traps of traffickers. Okay. So I've personally known Jeff from quite a few years. So he's truly a very genuine person who cares for various things that happen, and truly it's commendable that he has been part of these rescue operations. So here he is going to talk to us about this topic, this subject of sex trafficking, an awareness lecture, and enlighten us, and so that we can become wise and careful about what's happening around us. Okay. So over to you, Jeff. Welcome to NMBF Coffee Chats. Please take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abhijit, and thank you everyone for joining and taking some time to listen to this topic, because I think from my own experience, I think this is a very sensitive topic and we all should be aware of it, everybody in general. And creating awareness, I think it should be a part of every responsible citizen in order to bring such heinous crimes under control, because it's not easy to tackle the organized crimes of trafficking. It all needs coordinated efforts to bring it down. But what we can actually basically do, the minimum that we can do is have good knowledge about it, and share that knowledge with girls, both urban and rural, in different states and in different languages, so that they themselves are aware and can take care of their own self-security and be careful about not falling into traps of traffickers. So before I go ahead, I would like to just specify in brief that sex trafficking is part of human trafficking. Human trafficking is there are various forms of human trafficking actually that takes place all over the world. It is a global menace. It takes place in most of the countries, except for a very few strict countries, the Islamic countries in the Gulf. But I should say that it's not even the Islamic countries in the Gulf, the GCC countries are not 100% cleared of trafficking. They might be cleared of sex trafficking to some extent, but they still have trafficking taking place for domestic labor, and the exploitation of domestic servants whom they treat as slaves is quite common among all the GCC countries, in one of which I have been for 18 years. So I personally heard and even spoken to, witnessed some stories of abuse and exploitation. Anyway, so human trafficking takes place for the purpose of domestic labor. Yes, it takes place for the purpose of labor, slavery that happens in illegal mines, in illegal agriculture, and illegal fields of fishing. And these are just a few examples I gave you, but they could be slaves can be used in various parts of industries worldwide, which is happening. There are hidden places where industries flourish and slaves are used over there. So then the slavery, trafficking, human trafficking is done also to migrate, as many of you may be knowing. People migrate to Europe, and people migrate to try to migrate to North America, especially through the sea. And these are all handled and managed by traffickers mainly. Then we have other forms of trafficking, which is for the purpose of begging, for the purpose of forced marriage and child labor. There is a very small percentage of trafficking in the world that takes place for adoption of children when babies or toddlers are trafficked. That is not so common, but it has yet happened, and it perhaps maybe still happening. This is just for you to know. Now, most of the trafficking, a major part of trafficking is sex trafficking for the purpose of commercial sex. So this basically happens because there's minimum investment in it and there are big returns. It's an organized crime because there is a network of criminals that involve themselves in the success of such a crime, because then it happens in different parts. First part is trapping the victim. Now, the victim can be trapped mostly by an acquaintance, a family acquaintance, or a relative, or a friend of the family. In most cases, that happens in rural places of the world, but it also happens in urban places. Then the targeted victims are mainly between the age group of 15 and 20, because they are most vulnerable at that time, and they are so innocent. They don't understand what's happening. Then, excuse me. The next part, after the person who traffics them from the family, from the home, he transports them. He either transports them, he or she. Now, traffickers can be women also. They have been very, very successful women traffickers in the world. Traffickers transport the victim. Either the same trafficker could be involved to transport the victim, or they just hand over to another transporter, and the transporter manages the transportation. And transportation and the journey is usually a long journey because they usually take the victim far away. And when the victim reaches the destination, the victim is kept by the third part of the criminal, who looks after them, feeds them, reads them, consoles them, and is usually nice to them, and then finally sells them to the client. The client could be a brothel. The client could be an independent person. The client could be a massage parlor. It could be a club. It could be a bar. Mostly not in India. In India, in most cases, it is the client is mostly a brothel keeper. But then there are besides the brothel keepers, there are private people, private traffickers, both men and women, and sometimes shockingly husband and wife, who own private apartments and purchase girls in order to use them in those private apartments with private clients. So what we need to know is how can we prevent all this, basically, and what we need to what message we need to pass on to the girls and to women. I mean, women can play a major role. Women, they can be mothers, they can be aunts, they can be heads of institutions like the principals, hostel wardens. Women can really play a big role in creating awareness to girls, both in urban places and in rural places. People generally have uh, a notion which is not true, a false belief. They think most of the year trafficking, all kinds of trafficking takes place only in villages where the poor, innocent girls are targeted. That's not true. It's girls who are who are vulnerable in towns and cities as well. Girls going to run small errands in towns can be watched over by a few days of surveillance of the trafficker. For example, a woman trafficker might be around in a town, keeping an eye on the girls who pass by the dairy early in the mornings to buy milk, or who pass by to the bakery to buy bread at particular times on a daily basis. And once the traffickers uh, gets to know about the routine of such girls, then the girl becomes a soft target to be kidnapped. And the trafficker watching them could be a woman, could not be a woman, but in most cases, it is a woman trafficker who approaches the girls in such cases and befriends her, makes friendship with her, and continues the friendship for a few days, and finally gives her a ride in the car to reach her back to her house or something like that. And once the girls are uh, taken into the car of the trafficker, then that's the end. Then that's the end of the story. The girl is trafficked. The car goes to a different point, a faraway point, and from that point, the car is changed to another uh, road vehicle or a rail vehicle, a train, and she's gone. See, we as citizens generally, uh, why do we need to know all this? See, I'd like to point out the seriousness of the issue. If you, it's only when we hear about missing girls, we get sometimes information of missing girls, their photographs, sometimes on social media, and people tell us this girl so and so by name and by so and so age was last seen in so and so part of the town or city. If anyone has any information about her, please report it to the local police or report it to or call this number, inform this number. Right? We sometimes get such messages, and when I see such messages on social media, it really saddens me. I feel very bad about it because I understand that in most cases of the girl disappears, in most cases it's not possible to find her. It's either not possible. If it is possible to find her, then it is a very difficult process, and sometimes that is becomes a big success, and we find her after 3-4 days or 5 days or maybe a week. That's if the police is strong enough to cooperate and they help us out, and mostly she's found if she's trafficked by a relative or a family acquaintance, then it's easier to find her. But if she's trafficked by an unknown criminal, then in most cases it's not able to. Uh, it's not possible to find her. She within 24 hours or more than 24 hours, she reaches a very far away destination, and when she's being transported, most of them when they are soon after they are kidnapped and taken for transportation, most of them are sedated. They are either given oral sedatives or they are injected. Mostly I think they are given oral sedatives. Sometimes the oral sedatives are mixed in beverages, and these victims fall asleep, and they go into long hours of sleep, and then even if after they shifted to another vehicle or train, they continue to remain sleeping in a train, for example. They continue to remain sleeping so that there's no hindrance or disturbance till they reach their destination. After they reach their destination, they are dazed. They are put into a taxi or auto or a private vehicle, and then they are taken away to another place. So, as parents, we have to be concerned, even if we don't have daughters. We have to be concerned of girls. We have to be concerned of daughters, and we don't wish something like this to happen to them. This is one of the worst thing to happen to girls. The scripture in John 10:10 of the Bible says, "The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy." This is perfectly appropriate for such a crime. That the girl is stolen and her life is destroyed. Her, her dignity is killed. Her future is killed. Her family relationships are all finished. In most cases, she doesn't have any information about her families. After a few years, sometimes, if she's rescued, or even if it's fortunately if she's rescued even before anything goes wrong, then we help to reunite her with her families. There are many NGOs working for this cause in Mumbai and Kolkata. It started off in Kolkata. NGO started working for this cause in Kolkata because Kolkata has always been a hotbed for sex trafficking, where traffickers used to easily get victims from Bangladesh, from the rural villages of Bengal and the northeastern parts of India, and of course Nepal. Now, not to say that these markets don't exist in the present. They do exist in the present. All these markets do exist in the present as well. Traffickers still bring girls from Bangladesh into West Bengal because the language is the same. After they are brought into the West Bengal, fake documents are made for them. They are taught basics of Hindi. They are just taught how to respond to certain questions when people ask them in Hindi, and then from there on, most of them, if they traffic from Bangladesh, they are not kept in West Bengal or Calcutta for business. They are sent to other parts of the country. Trafficking, it can happen to any vulnerable victim. It doesn't really, they don't use, it doesn't really target the ones who are less than 20 years old. I said the ones who are less than 20 years old are most vulnerable because they're innocent. But then we've heard cases of mature, educated girls and young women, sometimes even in their early 30s, getting trafficked by known sources, or getting trafficked by friends and acquaintances they meet on social media. So, we've heard cases where young women, educated, matured young women, have fallen to traps while working in workplaces. There's always one black sheep in workplaces who's got a criminal mindset, and the person who's got a criminal mindset could be the owner of the company, could be the top right-hand man of the owner of the company, could be somebody in the top management. It could be somebody in the junior management, or he could be just one of the colleagues in the company who slowly makes friends with the victim and treats the victim, with food and drinks and gifts, and soon after they become good friends. Then someday they get trapped into the net of traffickers, and they are gone. They are disappeared also as well. I've heard of a case where when Uh, a girl was working in public relations for a small hotel, and the owner had a criminal mindset. He always had bodyguards with him. He had bodyguards because he feared he feared for his life. His bodyguards were armed. I don't know if they were legal or illegal bodyguards, but he always moved around with bodyguards. This guy always kept flattering this girl. She was about 26 or 27. He kept flattering this girl, and he uh, uh, kept giving her gifts, and made her one of the favorite of the employees in the hotel, and gave her all the importance she needed. After a few months, she was called for a house party. In that house party, she was raped by 12 people, including the owner. And after that, she was bundled up, taken away, and sold out somewhere, transferred out to another location. We got this information from one of the bodyguards who was concerned about what happened. It really caused him to be very upset about what happened, and he was scared as well. He gave us all this information, and he asked us if we could help. As members of the NGO at that time, we tried some ways how to find her, but we did not succeed in finding her. So this is just an example I gave you how urban, educated, mature girls can fall into traps. There could be other scenarios of how such girls can fall into traps as well. Basically, girls need to know. Girls need to be very careful. Girls need to be very aware, and seriously mature enough about their self-security. They can't take it for granted. Girls have to be matured. Even if they are not matured enough when they are 21 or 22 or 23, at least they should have the knowledge that how things can go wrong with them, and they should have the knowledge of looking after themselves and maintaining themselves, even if they are 26 and 27 and 28. All right. So traffickers, you got an idea now of who the traffickers can be. They could be acquaintances. They could not. They could be just strangers as well. Generally, traffickers most criminals do a surveillance actually on their targets. Most criminals, in most cases of crime, even if it is with regards to theft, robbery, then there is surveillance conducted by the criminals. There is always a surveillance conducted by terrorists as well. Terrorists don't commit acts of terrorism without surveillance. So victims have been fallen into traps during the pandemic. During the pandemic, what happened globally is the movement of criminals and traffickers was not possible. Transportation was not available. So they made their contacts. They built up their friendships with victims on social media. And soon as they got the opportunity when the lockdowns were relaxed, they got the victims transported and trafficked. So social media has always played and is still playing a role in getting victims trapped. It is still easy for girls, for especially girls in their teens, to fall into traps of social media, of strangers on social media. That is why it is very, very important to tell them not to make friends with strangers and unreliable people on social media. Now, for traffickers, both abroad and here in India, have been even boyfriends of the girls. Boys who start off a romantic relationship with the girls, they let it go on for a period of time. They enjoy it for a period of time, and someday, it becomes very easy for them to get that girl trafficked and sold to other traffickers. This is common in the US, and in some cases we even heard of husbands who get married to proposals on matrimonial sites, mostly in Asian countries, in our country and the neighboring countries. And soon after they get married to the woman, they sell her out to traffickers. So what what happens to the victim after she's kidnapped? After she reaches the final point of her destination, in most cases it is a brothel. When she reaches the final point of destination, in most cases, which is a brothel, she is threatened. Fear, coercive methods of fear is instilled in her by verbal abuse, a lot of verbal abuse, and physical abuse as well. She is beaten, she is burnt with cigarette ends. She is sometimes in the 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago, many prostitutes in brothels were found to have burn scars on their hands and legs, and the reason behind that was that they were in the earlier days after being trafficked, they were burnt with hot metal on their hands and legs so that they comply to the demands of the brothel keeper. Then after working in areas of trafficking, you see, I worked for an NGO in 2011 and 2012. Transforming Lives Foundation is what my NGO is called now, with whom I used to work with. Earlier, they were called Operation Rahab, and with them, we conducted many surveys. We conducted a lot of runs where we could collect information about the victim, and then verify the information, and finally inform senior officers of the police and conduct the raid on timings set by the police. All this was done in a secret operation. Everything was mostly done in secret right from the beginning to the end. Uh, so after we would, I'm sorry. While I was around with them with the NGOs, I had the opportunity of attending workshops and seminars related to trafficking, where police officers would join in from other parts of the state and other parts of India. Police officers and NGO workers would join in for such seminars and workshops, and they would share information. And in such workshops, we would hear of very select stories, very sensitive stories of trafficking, and we would also hear about heinous ways of torture committed to the victim by the trafficker himself, by the boyfriend himself, by the husband himself, or finally by the brothel keepers. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't specify this. I can't elaborate on all this. You might be curious on how we would operate secretly. I would just give you a small clue: is that we would have young boys in our team who would go around the market with body cameras, with hidden cameras on themselves, and they would collect information by video and audio, and get all this information back to the office in the end of the day, where we would put everything together and work on it. And when the time and day was right, then we would we would not go to the local police stations, because local police stations and somebody or the other in the local police stations were and are still corrupt, and information usually gets leaked out, and then the whole rescue operation doesn't happen. So we would approach senior police officers in the level of DCPs and ACPs, and even sometimes even CPs and SPs of police, and we would inform them about our victims who need to be rescued, and it is through their efforts and through their cooperation we would conduct the raid and get the forced victims rescued, and the police would get the traffickers involved and charge them with crimes of trafficking. We've had some great success, actually. We've had some really good success in getting some minor girls in the raw age of 16, 17. In one case, the girl was 15 also. And we would get these girls rescued even before they were pushed into the trade. And that was the biggest part of our victory. That was the most joyful part of our operations, when we would rescue these minors. It was a big victorious time for us, as well as the police teams who were involved. Generally, police teams are teams of anti-human trafficking section of the city police. Sometimes there are no anti-trafficking units, so the local police get instructions from the higher ups, and then they are forced to cooperate. So excuse me. What happens after the rescue? the girls would and the criminals both would be taken to the police station. Criminals would be pushed inside the lockups custody. Next day they would be presented in court. The girls would be kept in a room, and all of the girls would be individually made to speak on giving verbal statements about their journey, and these verbal statements were given to female police personnel and female staff of the NGO, both together. So two teams would collect information from the victims and record it on a document and take the signature of the victim. In the night, at the end of the day, or in the middle of the night, after all this had to be completed in the police station itself, and after that, the victims are sent to the shelter home. If they are underage, then they are transported to the children's home, and other force victims, adult victims, would be transported to government shelter homes or private shelter homes. The next day, they would be presented to court, and then from there on, the court and the Child Welfare Committee, that is CWC, would give instructions to the police and the NGO about the process, which would really take time. So during that process, when the trial is on, girls are usually counseled in the shelter homes and taught. Many of them are taught skills like knitting and tailoring, and let me say, like these teaching of skills and the atmosphere of counseling and teaching of skills was better off in private rescue homes. In government rescue homes, everything was pathetic. The accommodation.
If you'll have to wind up, because people will have to have Q&A also. So kindly wind up in the next few minutes, please.
Yes. Right. So you have a basic idea now of trafficking from the start of the journey and to the end, where the victim reaches the shelter home, and a day comes when the victim is soon reunited to her family, repatriated to the place or country from where she has come. There are a lot of things, actually. The time is limited, so I can't mention it. And I would suggest that you read the book. If you get my book, book on Amazon Kindle. It's just an e-copy. It costs only 250 rupees on Amazon Kindle in India. Amazon Kindle has not made the hard copies, the print versions in India for some reason. Print versions are available abroad in other countries. So there's a lot of information inside this book besides the true stories. There are the statistics of different countries. There are examples of various forms of trafficking, and the 19 stories itself are will give a very broad view of information to the reader. And besides all this, there are many prevention points mentioned which could be used for trafficking. So everybody, all of you who have joined in for this meeting, who are listening to me now, I would suggest please if you are concerned, really concerned, if you have a burden to help as a citizen, please get the book, read the prevention points, read the stories. I mean, read the whole book, and then when you come to the point chapter of prevention points and spreading awareness, then you will really edify yourself to go further with spreading out the awareness to other women according to your plans. Perhaps you can spread the information to your relatives in your native places to speak out to other women and girls in their native languages. All right.
Yeah.
So
are we going on to the Q&A now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, friends, thank you so much, Jeff, for your wonderful sharing.